Chancellor, Mr. Mayor, it is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'll tell you something, it is really inspiring. We in Washington, we talk about education, we talk about job training, we talk about the people of America, the hardworking people and the children of America who need to get ahead in a new global economy, an economy unlike any economy we've had before, based upon technology, based upon learning. We talk about it, but to come here and to see you and to meet with you and to know that people are indeed preparing themselves for that new economy, preparing themselves to be stars in that new economy, that is a great, great inspiration. And you deserve a great round of applause. Thank you. If there is one animating idea, the central animating idea of this administration and of President Clinton, it is this, that people who are willing to work hard should have a shot at the American dream. Anybody willing to work hard. And that idea, that principle, that very basic principle, not handouts, the idea that everybody should be able to take responsibility for, but be given an opportunity to use their God-given talents, to reach for that American dream, that principle animates so much of what the President is trying to do, so much of what his administration is trying to do. Welfare to work, getting people off of welfare, getting them into work. Consolidating our job training programs. We have all kinds of job training programs, consolidating them, making them user-friendly, giving people skill grants so they can use them and come to a community college and get the skills they need. Have a tax deduction for education and job training, up to $10,000 per family, so people can get education and they can get skills. And I can tell you that is the most precious resource we have in this country, our people. Our people. Now, I, as Secretary of Labor, am here because there is no way to separate any longer education from jobs, education from work. The most valuable resource we have is our people. The most valuable business resource we have is our people. Businesses around America, the best businesses in this country, are investing in their workers. They're treating their workers not as costs to be cut, but as assets to be developed. They're training their workers, they're developing their workers, and they're building upon the education that workers already have, pushing responsibility down so that workers, in fact, do have the ability and the responsibility and the authority to get ahead. You see, it really is a partnership. Education, the workforce, employers, that is a partnership that is going to take this economy into the future. This administration stands for that very simple and basic proposition. Give people the ability to help themselves. Give people, the hardworking people of this nation, the ability to help themselves. I would like now to introduce my colleague in arms, my co-conspirator, as we go around the country talking about education and the workforce, education and jobs. This man is a great leader in education. He has done more to alert people about the importance of a good education, done more to improve the standards and the quality of primary and secondary school education than anybody I know. We walk arm in arm. We're almost joined at the, I was going to say we're almost joined at the hip. It's actually my hip and his elbow. My friend, Secretary of Education, Richard Riley. Thank you.
That was a good job. Thank you so much, Bob Reich, and It's a great pleasure for me to join with the distinguished Chancellor and the Mayor and your fine Congressman and Secretary Rice. You know, I've heard of the Kutztown Fair, and I've heard them talk about funnel cakes. And, you know, that sounds like something Bill Clinton would like. I don't know, maybe we can introduce him to them while he's here. I would certainly hope so. But it's, yeah, I have, Bob Rice and I, as he indicated, have worked closely together because we certainly realize that this business of education and jobs is so closely connected and so tied together. And by having our two departments work side by side as partners really is good for this country. And I think it's good for people in the communities to see labor and education working so closely together. And Bob, it's a pleasure to be with you here. This, as Secretary of Education, it's really great to be at this outstanding institution of higher learning. I know this at one time was primarily a school where teachers were taught, and I know that's still a very strong department here. Let me ask you to please raise your hand, all who are either majoring in education, plan to, or feel that you ought to. If you raise your hand. Good. Well, I thank you very much. Well, let's give the Department of Education a hand. There's no finer professional way to go, I think, than to be a teacher. And I tell people all over this country that in this information era, the capacity, the ability to communicate and to teach is really what's relevant, and I urge you all to take a look at that. Now, I want to mention briefly the things that we have been so interested in Washington, and hopefully those are bottom-up reforms that you support. They are bottom-up. The Goals 2000 Educate America Act is state and local driven. There's no federal, no national curriculum, no way to tell you how to do it, but it is support, it is prioritizing education in this nation at a time when education must be prioritized, but it leaves it up to you in the local schools and in the states to say how to do it. It's high standards, it's parent involvement. I see we have a minute before the president's coming, so I'm going to share a story with you. I've talked all over this country about parents working more with their children, reading with them, helping them with their homework, getting involved in the schools. And I had three of my grandchildren over visiting with us the other evening, and it was Riley, age 5, Pierce was about 2.5, and Hugh was 1. And we were there, and I had a stack of things to read, and my wife was reading a book, as the children's mother and father were. And my daughter, who was a former teacher, said to her 3 children, "Why don't we play library?" And the children liked that. Fortunately, Hugh, the 1-year-old, was asleep. That's always a good fortune. And so Riley took right on to it, the 5-year-old, and got a little book and started to read it. And she handed Pierce, who's 2.5, a men's catalog of clothing. And Pierce, of course, is a little young to read, and he looked at this catalog and he said, "Shirts and ties." And he turned the page, shirt and tie. And of course, I was into some very heavy stuff. I was trying to concentrate, as others were, and this was a thick catalog. Pierce went through the whole catalog, every page, shirt and tie. Finally, when he got to the end, we were all really convulsed in laughter. Pierce looked up. He said, "That is the best book on shirts and ties I've ever read." But I urge all of you to work with your children. That's the most important part of education, and grandchildren and friends. Let's look a minute at this middle-class Bill of Rights that the President addressed last night, and also think if you will, about the importance of the combination of things, the child care credit for children under 13 years of age, a $500 credit for all of children under that age to help middle-income parents, the tax deduction for tuition, and please think about the importance of that for higher education. What a great statement that investing in higher education is important, and in this country we recognize that even more. The idea then of having the IRAs expanded to include education and catastrophic health and first home buying and so forth. And then the skills grants that Bob referred to, this combination of education and training to empower people to be in control of their own training. I think this combination is tremendous, and I am so pleased that the President has seen fit to put it forth. I think it makes sense. It makes sense for children, for adults, and certainly for the future of this country. And it's time, I think, that we helped give families and give their children the increased control and the increased skills and education that they will need to negotiate in this new economy. And thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Kutztown University President Dr. David McFarland.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to Kutztown University on this special occasion. Without further ado, on behalf of Kutztown University and the entire Pennsylvania state system of higher education, it is with great pride and honor that I introduce to you the President of the United States of America, President Bill Clinton. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Y'all sit down and relax. Cold outside, warm in here. I want to thank Dr. David McFarland for that introduction and for making me feel so very welcome here at Kutztown. I've had a great time already.
I know that before I came out, your mayor, Mayor Swarrier, and Congressman Holden, who came up from Washington with me today, Secretary Reich and Secretary Riley talked, and I thank them for what they said, and I thank especially my colleagues, Congressman Holden and Secretary Reich and Secretary Riley, for what they have done for the cause of education. I am so happy to be here with all of you today. There are a lot of reasons I came here. One is I'm beginning to feel old, and I heard that you got a guy my age on your football team, and I wanted to, where is he? Where is Chuck Roseberry? Where is he? Stand up. Where are you? I know he's here somewhere. Where are you? Yeah, that's good. You know, it's all I can do every morning to get up and go jog, and I resent you a lot. I can't believe it, but I'm impressed. I'm also glad to be joined here by your former Congressman, Gus Yatron, and your former Senator, Harris Wofford. I thank them both for being here, along with Catherine Baker Knoll, our State Treasurer. Thank you, Catherine Baker Knoll, for coming, our State Treasurer. I'm glad to see you, too. And our neighboring Congressman, Paul McHale, wanted to come, but he could not. There is a very important vote this afternoon in the Congress, and Congressman Holden's already gone back. Besides, he's heard this speech before. I want to say how very proud I am to be here, because this is a time of great challenge for our nation, and I believe that this institution represents a big part of the answer to that challenge. You know, just a few moments ago, I had a brief roundtable with a lot of your community leaders, business people, teachers, and students who are associated with the efforts of this fine institution to help solve the problems of this area, to get an education to people, to help the businesses grow, to help start new businesses. I wanted to come here because I was very, very impressed with your Entrepreneurial Development and Global Education Center, the work you've done for small businesses, the work you've done for minority businesses, the work you've done to try to bring together people of all ages and all backgrounds who want to get an education and who want to serve and who want to help. And I'd like to ask all these folks who just met with me to stand up, because I learned a lot from them and I'm grateful for what they did. Would you all stand up, please? Thank you very much. There's one other group of people I'd like to acknowledge who are here, who represent a lot of what I talked about last night, who are young people trying to serve our country at the grassroots level by helping people solve their problems. They are the members of the Pennsylvania Service Corps, part of AmeriCorps. They're working to help people build housing, to reduce neighborhood violence, to clean up the local environment, to help people with AIDS. Busloads of them are here, and you just heard from them. I thank them for their enthusiasm, their devotion to their country, and for symbolizing what I think all of us have to do more of: learn and gain by serving and giving. You know, this is a beautiful rural area. I understand I'm the first president since 1948 to come to this county and the first person ever to visit this community as president, and I'm delighted to be here. Pennsylvania as a whole and this area have been through dramatic and sweeping economic changes in the last several years. The economic opportunity that made Pennsylvania one of the great manufacturing states of America and one of the great economic powers of the entire post-Cold War world have changed. Those forces have changed dramatically. And as those of you who are younger enter your adult years and look forward to the future, you know that we have moved from an industrial age to an information age. You will hear it everywhere. What you may not hear is it does not mean that manufacturing will be less important. Quite the contrary. If we do it right, it means that America will continue to be the leading manufacturing country in the world. But more and more and more manufacturing will require more knowledge, higher skills, a better education, fewer people producing more things, which means that education will be important, and it will also be important for us to continually be able to start more and more new businesses. Big enterprises are like the federal government. We're downsizing. We're making the federal bureaucracy smaller so we can give the money back to you to educate people, to provide tax relief, to bring the deficit down, to fight crime. That's what we're doing. And that is very, very important. It matters to your future that the federal debt is now $10,000 a family less than it would have been if our deficit reduction plan had not passed. It matters that the economic programs have helped to contribute to this enormous rise in productivity in America. And we have over 6 million new jobs in our country now in the last 2 years with low inflation and with every prospect of continuing our growth. But what's going to enable us to solve our problems over the long run is the ability and strength of the American people to solve their problems at the local level, to make the most of their own lives, and to work together in communities. I said last night in my speech, and I will say again today, that I believe what our country needs is a new covenant based on an old idea. The idea that with opportunity must come responsibility. They have to go hand in hand. If you don't have both, you can't solve the problems of America. If you tell people to be responsible all the time and they never get any benefit out of it, pretty soon they get tired and quit. But if people just always say, I want my rights, and we don't think about what responsible conduct is for ourselves and our friends and neighbors, and pretty soon our society comes apart. We have to have both. And we have to base our efforts in community after community after community where people can sit down, the way these people did with me today, and talk to each other and work to each other, with each other, to develop the God-given potential of all of our people. In the world we are moving into, the success of the United States as a whole will be more dependent than ever before on the success of every community to educate and develop the capacities of every person who lives in the community. Everywhere, in every place. We don't have a person or a community we can walk away from and turn our backs on. That's why, even though we've been cutting government spending, and last year, for the first time in 25 years, we cut both defense and domestic spending, except for Medicare and the health programs of the government and Social Security, of course. We cut domestic and defense spending for the first time in 25 years to deal with the deficit. But we did not cut education. We expanded Head Start. We expanded our efforts to help our public schools achieve educational excellence. We set up a program to try to support networks like the ones I saw today for businesses to work with schools to help young people who don't go to four-year colleges at least get some education and training after high school so they can get better jobs and have higher incomes. We reformed the college loan program so that student loans now are less costly to middle-class students, have better repayment terms, and they actually cost the government less in terms of tax dollars. It is a good program. And with all of that, let me remind you of what the fundamental facts are in this economy and why these efforts are so important. Even though we had 6 million new jobs in the economy in the last 2 years, even though we had more high-wage jobs coming back into our economy in 1994 than in the last 5 years combined, most Americans are working a longer work week than they were working 15 years ago for about the same income once you make adjustments for inflation. That is, most of our people have found that this new exciting global economy, which moves with lightning speed and opens up vast opportunities for people who can take advantage of it, has left them working harder for less, with less security. All these changes are great if you can always get a new job, but if you're the one losing the job, the change doesn't look pretty good, very good. So what our job is to make more success stories like the programs I see here. It is to empower more schools to do what this one did, to drop their categories and open their walls and reach out to all kinds of people and make education a community enterprise and a lifetime enterprise. That is what we must do. And that is why I say to the American people and to the Congress, we have gotten the deficit down, and we have gotten the economy going, and there are more cuts we can make in government spending, and we can afford to provide some more tax relief to hardworking Americans, but we should do it with a focus on education so that we can raise people's incomes who have worked harder for less in the short run with the tax relief, but in the long run with better education, which is the only way to raise people's income over the long run. You think about the things that this country's done in our past that really did something for the economy. I think you can make a compelling case that at the end of World War II, the passage of the GI Bill did more to explode the American economy than any other single action, because it made it possible for our returning servicemen to go back to school and to get an education. And that money has repaid itself many times over. So I have said that that's the kind of thing we ought to focus on now. The Middle Class Bill of Rights that I proposed last night to the American people and to Congress, and as I said, it might better be called a Middle Class Bill of Rights and Responsibilities, because you by definition have to be responsible to take the benefits of it, focuses heavily on education in 3 ways, and I want to emphasize them. First of all, I think you ought to be able to deduct the cost of education after high school from your taxes. You can you think about it. If you own a home, you can deduct the interest from your taxes. And in the early years of a home mortgage, it's almost all interest. Why do we do that? Because we want people to be able to own their homes. If you run a business and you invest in new equipment, you can deduct the cost from your taxes. Why do we do that? Because we want our businesses to modernize. You know, the stories I heard over here before I came out were cost of equipment's going up dramatically, but now we can produce more with fewer people. We gotta support that. But if our people today can't get an education, not everybody needs a 4-year college degree, but if they can't get an education, if the systems aren't there for that education, they may not get to the home owning. They may not have the American dream that we want. So I say, if education is the most important thing for personal success in the 21st century, we ought to permit people to deduct the cost of it from their taxes. Raise your income in the short run, raise your income in the long run. The second thing, that's right. You know, we flew that person up here from Washington. I was beginning to think they weren't going to say that. The second thing I want to say is we want to broaden the number of Americans who can invest tax-free in an IRA, an individual retirement account, but we want to let people withdraw from the IRA tax-free to pay for education expenses so that you can take better care of yourself. The last education component is we want to take about 70 different programs the federal government runs in training, which require enormous administrative costs, collapse them, and give the money to the American people who are eligible for them, so that if a person loses a job and is on unemployment, or if a person is in a lower wage job so they're eligible for federal training help, instead of having to figure out which of 70 programs you qualify for, you just get a voucher of $2,600 a year, up to that, for 2 years, and you take it to this school, or take it to a local community college, or take it wherever you choose if you're eligible to get it. It's a kind of a GI Bill for American workers. It will make a huge difference, and it's the kind of thing government ought to be doing. Less bureaucracy, more direct help to people to get the education and training they need to grow and to learn. I want all of you to help me do this for you. We are trying to change the focus of the national government to the grassroots of America. There are a lot of other things that I will be talking about over the next few weeks that are part of this new covenant. Welfare reform, what we're going to do in crime to lower the crime rate and implement the crime bill, what we're going to do to try to grow the economy in other ways. But nothing can make a bigger difference in trying to get more education to more people in more ways. So I hope that you will do two things. First, I hope you will say, with your voices, without regard to your party, cut the deficit, cut spending, reduce the size of the federal bureaucracy, keep on doing what you're doing, but do not cut education. Increase investment in education so we can grow this economy and grow America. And I hope you will support the Middle Class Bill of Rights, and I hope you will support the AmeriCorps program in Pennsylvania, and I hope you will support the programs at this school to develop entrepreneurs, because they're all grassroots community building programs that develop the ability of people to fulfill their own dreams and bring us together across the lines that divide us. You know, I literally don't have a clue about which of the people I was sitting talking with this morning were Democrats, which were Republicans, who was an independent. I don't have any idea who they voted for in the last election. I probably should have checked before we did. No, I mean, I don't. Why? Why? Because they are organized around developing the potential of the people here. They have built a community of interest where everybody wins by helping everybody else. Now, that's what makes America go. That's what makes America grow. I see it when I visited these community services programs. I see it, as I said last night in my speech, when I go out after a disaster. I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but if you go to one of these places where they're putting sandbags on a levee against a flood, or where they're trying to help people deal with the aftermath of the fires, as I saw in California, the earthquakes, people have their shoulders back and their heads held high and their eyes are clear and their voices are strong. Why? Because they know they matter. When Americans get in trouble, you know, we would take the shirt off our back for people, and we fight and we work in these things because we know we matter, because we're doing something that makes us feel better and stronger, and we're helping other people as well. We have to return that spirit to our country every day, in every way, in all of our activities. That is what this is all about, and we can do that. So what I want to say to you is, we've got a lot of economic challenges, and we've got some profound social problems. But we can deal with them. We can solve them. We can move on them. I see it. I have been all over this country. I'm telling you, there is not a problem this country has that is not being addressed in a way that all of you would be proud of by somebody somewhere. What we have to do is to figure out a way to galvanize and organize and energize all of that work so that it spreads across our whole country. The new covenant is a way of thinking about that. Responsibility in return for opportunity, building this country at the community level. That's what I'm committed to doing. My role in that will be, in this coming Congress, to try to pass the Middle Class Bill of Rights, to try to emphasize education, to try to keep downsizing the federal government and controlling the deficit and cutting unnecessary spending, but building up those things which will enable people to make the most of their own lives. That is my job. Your job is to support institutions like this, to get all the education you can, to break down the walls between business and government and education at the grassroots level, and to try to help me pass this. Will you do that? I need you. I hope you will. And I want your support for it. Folks, the best days of this country are still before us. This is the most exciting era we have ever known. You're going to see opportunities in the next 20 years for people to make a living in exciting and interesting ways that we could not have imagined 20 years ago. But our job is to make sure that, as President Kennedy said, the rising tide lifts all boats. We can't have an America where 20 or even 40% of us are the only ones that really do well in this global economy. And it need not be that way. But if we want our best days to lie ahead, we have got to say, we're going to get an education for all of our people. It's going to be a lifetime project. Our educational institutions are going to become the center of our communities. We're going to tear down the walls that divide us. We're going to make education available to everybody. And we're going to use the power of government not to expand or create a new bureaucracy, but to empower people at the grassroots level to chart their own future and to make their own lives in this new and exciting age. That is our mission. If we do it, our best days are ahead. I want that more than anything for you, for our children and our grandchildren and our country. And I can tell you the world still needs that. There are a lot of things out there in the rest of the world that are still a threat to decency and humanity and progress. You saw this terrible terrorist attack in the Middle East in the last couple of days. The world needs a strong America, and Americans deserve it. And we're going to get it with your help. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you. I like that. Thank you.